Project AJ gets put back together. Suspension, steering, wiring. Today's show is all about the details. Plus, look at the real heroes of rock crawling. Hold on. Xtreme 4x4 starts now.
Welcome to Xtreme 4x4. We're nearing the end of our Project AJ, the no-limit, no-budget hardcore off-road trail rig. Now, as soon as I get these diffs painted, we can go ahead and start putting her back together.
And then by the end of today, we should have that chassis sitting back on some wheels and tires. We're going to drop a body on this thing. We should be ready to measure for some drive shafts, not to mention fire this thing up with a set of keys.
Last time, we built the top of our engine using GM Performance fast burn aluminum heads, and then dropped on a ramjet fuel injection kit.
Then once we had the 700R4 and Atlas II transfer case bolted up, we dropped the entire drivetrain into our freshly Rhino line frame, and then just for kicks, we fired that engine up.
Before we slide these Curry axles back under the frame, we need to put a good coat of paint on it so they don't rust up on us. I masked off the areas that I didn't want painted, like the housing, the brakes, the ARB air locker fittings. Then cleaned the diffs with a prep wipe, applied a couple good coats of primer, and then finished it off with Duplicolor fast drying acrylic enamel.
While Jesse finishes up our diffs, I'm going to go ahead and reinstall our Skyjacker Double Flex Rock Ready suspension. Now, one of the biggest hang-ups you can find when you take on a project this big is getting nuts and bolts. We got a master set from Gardner Westcott, and that comes with a complete set of bolts in multiple sizes and thread pitches, and that's going to help us out whenever we get into a jam.
That didn't hurt that bad, not near as bad as my back just did. See, look, I can still move it. After a smashed thumb and a few bad words, we finally got our suspension on. So now it's time for the wheels and tires. Now, we had originally started with the Pro Comp simulated bead locks from their Xtreme series, but this truck isn't going to be seeing the street, so a true trail truck needs to be bead locked.
So, we packed up our Xtreme wheels and shipped them off the Champion wheel in California, where they went ahead and added a bead lock ring to the outside of our rim. That inner ring, along with this outside lock ring, is going to squish the outside bead of this tire and hold it in place. That's going to allow us to air this tire down to 4 to 6 psi without risking the outside bead coming off the rim while the tire is driving over obstacles. Once we squish this in place, just got to tighten up the bolts. Before we drop that Aqualoo body back on this frame, we have to deal with some of the plumbing. So I'm going to slip the combination valve in, our pre-bent brake lines from inline tube, tidy up all the fuel lines, and maybe slip in the air locker lines as well. Remember, we pre-drilled and tapped holes for the tie downs before the frame was coated, making this a piece of cake. Inside those Curry differentials, along with a 410 gear set, are ARB air lockers front and rear. So that means we're going to have to add some more plumbing to control those lockers. Now, ARB will send this blue plastic air line, which is fine under most circumstances, but if you work this stuff really hard, you can kink this tubing, and that's going to restrict airflow to your locker. So the newest thing that guys are using is modified stainless brake hose. And we got these ones from Independent 4x, and they're made specifically for ARB air lockers. We got a 12-foot piece for the front and a 6-foot piece for the back, and they'll just screw into the locker.
Heavy lifting, tug of war, and darting for cover. All just a day in the life of a spotter when Xtreme 4x4 continues.
We're taking a break from our ultimate Jeep build to head back to Moab, Utah.
And while the trail runners were having fun on the slick rock, the pros were tearing it up.
This year, the new We Rock series kicked off the week-long Easter Jeep Safari, where some of the best rock crawlers in the world battled the tough southern Utah terrain.
Moab's a little bit different out here. As you can see, we got a lot of brush, a lot of wood, a lot of dirt on these rocks. Too much throttle, you spit the buggy off the side. Not enough, you just sit there and spin in the sand. So this terrain's very challenging to say the least.
When the rain and sleet came, tires weren't the only things spinning on this rock.
We're rock crawlers. We can handle this. It's better than NASCAR, it's better than off-road racing. People doing a lot of stupid stuff, and it's great, isn't it?
Sometimes you make it, sometimes you don't. My spotter did an awesome job of stacking rocks, and sometimes you don't get it.
In a sport where success and failure come down to inches, it's the working men of rock crawling that make the difference.
Spotters like the linemen in the NFL. They do all the work and the quarterback gets all the glory.
Vince Lombardi once wrote, "The harder you work, the harder it is to surrender, and the professional spotters do not quit, and they will never surrender."
My main function is to guide the driver through a course without hitting cones.
Risking life and limb to accomplish that mission, they do whatever is necessary.
Getting rocks in position or starting a turn when you need to and then correcting for our next move.
Turn that way, back up some more.
The biggest thing is keeping the driver calm. If he starts getting irritated and hitting the throttle a little harder than you want him to, you got to say, whoa, whoa, stop, stop, stop. You know, let's regain thought here and go on.
Backbreaking work hasn't made them rich or famous, but to their drivers, these men are heroes.
They're the heart and soul of the whole thing, to be honest with you. You could almost put a monkey behind that steering wheel, but you can't tell a monkey where to put those rocks. So they do a fantastic job, and we wouldn't be here without them.
Can't do that without your spotter, for sure.
You've just got to admire a guy that wants to lift rocks, stack it, pull on a vehicle, and help as a team to get you over the top and through the gates.
After 9 Baja 1000 wins and 144 off-road racing victories, Walker Evans could have retired and gone golfing. Instead, he joined the pro rock crawling circuit.
From 120 to 2 miles an hour, and this is my 5th year doing it. I've really enjoyed it.
For this man of speed, Walker had to modify his style.
The biggest thing that I had to overcome was being in too big a hurry. My very first rock crawl, I said, oh, they're giving you 10 minutes. I make it through here in 5. Do I get any extra deduction of points? I had to slow down, and patience is really a virtue in rock crawling.
There's one aspect of the sport he's having trouble dealing with.
I wake up with nightmares hitting cones. I mean, it's like some people count sheep to go to sleep. Man, it's the opposite. If I see a cone in the middle of a dream or something, I'm wide awake. I hit a cone? You're kidding. Where was it, you know?
He may have finished outside the top 20 at Moab, but the fans don't mind.
I'm Jeff Stevens. I know who you are, Walker Evans.
Hi,
Just
Jeff. How are you?
proud to meet you.
Thank you.
And for now, he has no plans to pick up those golf clubs.
Well, it's very gratifying. It really is to be able to continue doing something. And I do love doing this. And so, who knows? I'm 66 years old. I'm in great physical shape and I feel good. So, you know, the good Lord can maybe tell you that. I don't know.
What a great guy, that Walker Evans, and a good racer.
And let's hear it for the unsung heroes of rock crawling, the spotters.
Got an idea for the show? Drop us a line at Xtreme4x4TV.com.
Welcome back to Project AJ, our ultimate hybrid Jeep build.
We went ahead and dropped the body on the frame to get ourselves one step closer to having a finished Jeep, and now we got to deal with some steering, gauges, and wiring.
And once we had this grill shell on, I got this really cool idea for the off-road lights that we got. Since we have no intentions of driving AJ on the street, we went ahead and got these wicked Narva lights from Safari Lighting. Now normally you would be mounting these on your bumper or on your roll cage, but since we have the holes in the grill, we're gonna go ahead and mount them in here. The only problem is, is that this is a square mounting surface, so I'm gonna have to do a little fabrication to get those flush mounted.
Now for the steering, we went to Flaming River and got a complete kit from them. This thing is everything for a Jeep, and it includes a new tilt column, a new steering wheel, power steering pump, all the U-joints, a new shaft, and a quick ratio steering box specifically for the CJ. The first thing to go in is the box. With the new box mounted to the frame, I can install the pitman arm and connect the TerraFlex drag link. Before we can put the steering column in, I have to pull this windshield frame back off and then put the dash just in place temporarily so we can see where the column is going to come through the opening.
Now, as you can see, I filled in these circles with sheet metal, and then I'm going to have to go back in once I'm done welding and go in a deeper diameter so I can actually fit the headlights into something.
We'll use this universal floor adapter to cover up the hole that we're going to cut in the floor once we get this all lined up. Mark the location of the column on the firewall. Drill a 2-inch hole with the hole saw. Mark the holes for the adapter and drill them out. Then install the column and bolt it all together. Now we can slip in this steering shaft and cut it to length. We got this collapsible item with all the stuff from Flaming River, and we want to make sure that we cut this to the right length. Now this is not a cheap piece of equipment, so you don't want to make a mistake. We're going to start with a piece of hardwood dowel. We're going to mock it into place into the U-joints. We can check for length and make sure we're not hitting anything before we actually cut that shaft.
With the grill in place, I can start bolting up the hinges for the hood and windshield using the new stainless pieces from Quadratech. All right, the holes are drilled for the hood hinges, and since we're not going to be using fenders, we're not going to be using those hood latches, so I'm going to fill these holes before it gets sent out to get coated.
And you guys building these trucks at home, you know what this is like. You put something together, you see something you don't like, so you got to take it back apart. Or you put something together, and then you have to take it back apart to do the next step. And that's where we are with the dash. It had to be installed to line up the steering column, but now the steering column has to come out so we can take the dash out and deal with the wiring and the gauges. But first I'll mark all the mounting holes so we can drill them out. Wiring is one of those things that a lot of guys think you can save a pile of money simply by designing and making your own harness. But by the time you guys find a fuse block, fusible links, relays, and all the switches, you spend just as much, if not more, than a pre-made harness like this one we got from Painless. Now, not only does this thing come with fully color-coded wires that are labeled every 6 to 8 inches to tell you exactly where stuff is going to go, this off-road harness comes with a waterproof fuse block, and that's really going to help us out in this Jeep, considering we're not going to put a roof on this thing. And trust me, this thing's going to be a lot easier to put in than a harness that you make yourself. Since the fuse block will mount under the dash, I'll first drill a hole for the grommet. At this point, I'm just going to run and mount all the wires to their appropriate spots. Then once all of our electrical items are installed, they'll be ready to hook up.
With the holes filled in the hood, I can start directing my attention to the dash. Now this is an aluminum piece that we got from Quadratech, and I'm going to be filling it with these cobalt gauges from Autometer. Not only do they light up with an intense blue LED light, but I can calibrate this speedometer by driving over a fixed 2-mile distance to accommodate any tire and gear size.
Now, one thing that's going to differ on every truck are the gauges, and in this Jeep there's a pile of them. So I went ahead and made a dash harness for this Jeep. I took all the pigtails from the odometer gauges and then added the wires that we're going to need for the speedo and the tach. Then I pulled all the power and illumination circuits to one side, and I took all the engine side stuff and put it on the other. Now, you can go ahead and just crimp this stuff together, but if you really want it to last, you should always solder every joint, especially when you're dealing with an off-road truck that's going to see some serious use.
Ta-da!
I like the X.
I did that for the 4x4.
I guessed that.
Yeah.
Here we go. Ready?
All right, the bottom one is water.
Once I get all the power and illumination feeds to the gauges, I'll move to the color wires that feed the sensors.
Then we can put the dash and steering column back in place.
Ready?
Yep, let's
Go.
Make sure you check back after the break. We got to put on a transmission cooler, mount the battery and the fuel cell, and measure for drive shafts.
Why am I doing all the pushing?
Because you're stronger than I am.
For more information on anything you've seen today, check us out online, Xtreme4x4TV.com.
Welcome back to Xtreme 4x4 and one of our final shows on Project AJ. We have just a few more things to get done, and then we'll have a full-on driver.
And before we can finish wiring up this thing, we got to put a battery in it. So we're going to use one of these new Deca Intimidator AGM series. They have a unique cube design for the cells that'll resist vibration and shock off-road. And once we make a battery box to match this mock-up, just bolt it right in.
Now everyone with an open trail rig can relate to this. Securing your cargo off-road can be a challenge. So we went to Tuffy Security Products to get a cargo drawer for the back of the Jeep. This is a self-contained, fully lockable drawer that holds up to 300 pounds and it's weather resistant. Now on top of this drawer, we're going to be putting this RCI racing cell that we got from Summit. We had considered putting it where the factory tank went, but decided it was a little bit sketchy to have a plastic tank right on the departure angle of some rocks.
And the last thing to deal with on this Jeep is the drive shaft. Now JE Reel is going to make our drive shafts for us, but we got to get a pile of measurements before we get that done. With the vehicle at ride height, measure the distance from yoke to yoke. Then extend the suspension to its limits. Then using the distance between the axles and the bump stops, calculate the compressed distance of each shaft.
That about wraps her up for today, and we even wired up the ignition switch for you.